Here with Jane Hawtin Live. My guest is Superintendent Bruce Elwood of the Hamilton Wentworth Regional Police. And joining us now is Karen McArthur, a Toronto defense lawyer. Karen represented Keith Legere, a pedophile and convicted child killer. Keith Legere was released into the Hamilton area, and he was recently arrested for breaching a court order which forbids him from being within 30 meters of children under the age of 14. Karen McArthur is no longer his lawyer, but she believes that convicted child molesters should not be publicly identified once they've served their sentence. Right. And I know that you know Bruce well and have had some
dealings in the past.
Some dealings and some arguments over what should happen with convicted pedophiles.
Differences of opinion rather than arguments. I certainly can see Bruce's point of view, and I think that he can see my point of view, I don't think the Hamilton Police Force is advocating vigilantism or lynching people once they're released, and I appreciate that they'll come that distance, but I think that many people are still in favor of sort of vigilantism and lynching these people when they come out, and not allowing people to put behind them their crime and not being satisfied with them simply having served their time. They want to keep controls on them, and I think that it is not necessary.
Why is it not necessary? I mean, we've got all these experts who tell us that pedophiles are very likely to reoffend, that the kind of treatment that they're being given doesn't work.
It's an illness. It's an illness that many experts don't fully understand, but in terms of the recidivism rates and the studies, I don't think you can actually say positively that they will reoffend. But
can you say that they won't?
I can't say that they won't, but I can't venture to say what Bruce might do tomorrow either, nor you. And I don't think that it's our position to look into the future and say, because we have a fear that they might think a bad thought, that we have to play Big Brother. I don't want to have pedophiles or people who have been convicted of sex offenses being subject to the long arm of the state. I think the long arm of the state goes quite far enough in my life, your life, and Bruce's life, and we've got to draw a line. And so that's what a defense lawyer is involved in doing, is drawing lines. I'm a civil libertarian. I say the state can go so far and not further. Now, that's not to say that I'm in favor of having children sexually molested. I'm as in favor of children's rights as anyone else, but I'm also in favor of adult rights, and we have to come to terms with the fact that pedophiles are a portion of our adult population. Some of them have been convicted and brought before the courts, but a great many of them haven't been.
But communities want to know when someone like this is released into their midst. Are you saying, sorry, you don't have the right to know that?
That's what I'm saying.
That they don't?
They don't have the right to know.
And what if that pedophile does commit an offense again, and it's someone that's a neighborhood child?
Well, then when someone is arrested and there's an allegation that they have committed an offense, unless there's a publication ban obtained, and usually those are obtained by Crown attorneys to protect the complainants, unless there's a publication ban, then the public would know that someone had been arrested.
Well, Bruce, this is what we were talking about. You know, what's the difference with pedophiles and with sex offenders than from any other kind of criminal? I mean, we don't tell the community when a murderer is released into their midst.
That's correct, and it's like I said before. When we're dealing with pedophiles, and as Karen's quite correct, we've had some disagreements in the past, some positive, some negative, but I do respect some of her position, and she respects some of mine as well. But I still strongly believe that when you have a person who is a definite pedophile, and I think we have to be very careful with that, because we have a lot of people in our system that have been convicted of child molestation, but they're not actually pedophiles.
So what is a pedophile? Someone who's committed a crime more than once?
Well, no. I think you have to remember that we have people that have gone through our criminal justice system, and even though they've molested a child, they're not by clinical definition a pedophile, because a pedophile is a person who has a strict sexual preference for children. And I've sat with the mental health people with this, and I've sat with the institutional people on the correction side, and they all basically say the same thing. Especially mental health will tell you that pedophilia is not a mental illness, that it is non-treatable, there is not a cure that anybody's aware of. And then when you get this other opinion coming from corrections that say, well, this person's now coming back out into your community, he is probably going to molest a child. And I know where Karen's coming from, but unfortunately, we're the ones on the other side that end up knocking on the door at 2 o'clock in the morning to tell the parent that that child's been molested. And if I can change that, if we can stop that, if we can prevent that in any way possible, then that's what I'm in favor of.
But I'm not certain that simply warning the community is going to prevent the police officers from having to knock on the doors of a parent's home at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, but it might help. It might help.
I'm not certain that it will. All it will
but
do,
it's more
in
likely that the parents aren't going to say allow the kids to go next door and borrow a cup of sugar from this guy if they know who it is that's living next door, right?
Not necessarily so. I mean, you can't keep 24 hours surveillance on these people and alerting the community. What's that going to do? I mean, it may well just achieve the opposite result of getting the recently released person more anxious, more uptight. And there are studies that certainly suggest that when you put a position in that type of situation, they are more likely to reoffend. So rather than solving the solution, or solving the problem, it may in fact exacerbate whatever problem may be there.
So do we ignore the parole board? Do we ignore Corrections Canada who say, look, this guy's coming out, we think he's going to offend again? I mean, this is pretty good advice, isn't it? I mean, wouldn't they be the experts who would know what this person's likely to do?
Not necessarily, no. They don't have the answers. As Bruce has said, it is an area where there is a dispute. I say that pedophilia is a mental illness. Now, Bruce has just said that he's aware of mental health professionals that say it isn't an illness. It is in the DSM-3R, the diagnostic manual for psychiatrists and other helping professions, and it has been accepted as a mental illness by our courts.
Well, then maybe they shouldn't be in prison at all.
Exactly.
And then we wouldn't have the problem with limited kinds of sentences that would let them out. Maybe they should be in mental institutions.
Perhaps there should be more of a focus for treatment and help than on
all right, well,
retribution.
Let's go to the phone lines. We want to take a break first. You're with Jane Hawtin Live. We're taking your calls at 1-800-510-JANE. I know you're anxious to get in on this conversation. Up next, a woman who has campaigned for a national registry of child sex offenders. We want to hear how you feel about this issue, whether you think the community should have the right to know when a pedophile is released into their midst. We'll be right back.
Is their son or daughter or brother or sister or that? Is this how they want them treated? Vigilante groups, meetings and stuff? I made a mistake.